Hey YouTube, my name is Joe Edelmann, and I'm a guitarist and vocalist for the band Burn Holiday. I started this channel about a year ago as a way of trying my hand at recreating some of my favorite songs, with a particular emphasis on the band Radiohead, who are the group closest to my heart, in case that wasn't already completely obvious. I had no idea where I might go with it or what the reaction would be, and so now, a year on, I'm just so pleasantly surprised and grateful and humbled by all of your support, and really just truly excited and thankful to be able to share my enthusiasm and love for this band and for others with you. So thank you again to all of you who have already subscribed, and an advance thank you to future visitors and subscribers to this channel. Also, really want to take the opportunity to thank the really fantastically talented people I've had the opportunity to collaborate with over the past year, not the least of which my own bandmates, my good friend Chris Picampus, and two new friends that I've made across the world, which is really amazing and just speaks to the power of this music. My friend Taka, also known as Fluffy Momo in Japan, and Lucas Valim of Brazil. Today I wanted to try out something new as another way of sharing my enthusiasm and some of the lessons that I've learned as I deconstruct these songs. I wanted to talk a little bit about the techniques of a great modern guitar player and composer extraordinaire, Mr. Jonny Greenwood. In particular, I wanted to talk about his creative uses of the delay pedal, which is a fairly ubiquitous guitar effect at this point. And while this lesson will be geared a little bit more towards guitar players and musicians, I also hope that even the non-musician and someone just music listener can glean some insight as to how Radiohead make the music that they do and why it's impactful just from this tutorial. While Johnny's bandmate Ed O'Brien is also a notable delay aficionado, and you should check out his recent appearance on That Pedal Show if you're a Radiohead and gear nerd like myself. It's incredibly inspiring. Johnny's use of delay really strikes me as clever because while Ed focuses more on using delays, plural, to create sort of ambient textures and washes and pads underneath the rest of Radiohead's playing, Jonny focuses more on delay, in my opinion, as a composition tool, as kind of a rhythmic element, or almost as a second instrument or another guitar player to complement his playing. So I'll use three recent Radiohead songs to illustrate three of Johnny's delay pedal tricks. With the song Identikit, I'll demonstrate Johnny's use of a somewhat classic delay pedal move, which is the dotted eighth single repeat delay. In this case, he uses it to flesh out the song's bouncing, almost dub-influenced rhythm. With the song Staircase, I'll demonstrate Johnny's sneaky use of a single repeat delay to create an almost guitar harmonizer type effect. And in the song The Present Tense, I'll talk about Johnny's use of delay and remarkable intuitions for rhythm to create an almost step sequencer or arpeggiator type effect. Before I start, a couple of obvious disclaimers. I will never be, nor do I aim to be, Jonny Greenwood or any member of Radiohead. These covers and this tutorial are simply made out of my sheer love for the band and for their music, and in the hopes that myself and others can take from them the building blocks to make cool music of our own. And B, these are my own descriptions of the techniques used, and while I've learned a lot of what I've learned in making these covers via ear, I've also leaned very heavily on some great resources, like the website thekingofgear.com, which I'll link in the description. Is just a fantastically thorough accounting of all of Radiohead's gear and the techniques that they use, and other Radiohead-affiliated channels like the great Warren Music, who's been making tutorials, for a long time, and they're fantastic, and I've used a lot of them in my own covers. Okay, so here's my setup for today. I'm using my Fender American Deluxe Telecaster, which has been lovingly adorned with some Radiohead paraphernalia, into a Vox AC30, and here I have the Boss RE20, which is a digital emulation of the Roland Space Echo delay, which Radiohead freaks will recognize as Johnny's weapon of choice. It's really a fantastic pedal, and it nails that ever so slightly warbly tape sound, which Jonny prefers. However, at the risk of stating the obvious, you do not need this pedal, nor any tape delay for that matter, to utilize the techniques which I'll describe. Any good digital or analog delay pedal, preferably one with a tap tempo functionality, will suffice. So let's start off with Identikit. Johnny's delay pedal is engaged for the entirety of the song, and it forms the basis of the main guitar figure's rhythm. Here I'm referring mostly to the 2016 recorded version of the song, or studio version of the song, off of the album A Moon-Shaped Pool, but this was also true of Johnny's technique as going as far back as the 2012 live versions of the song that they debuted during the King of Limbs tour. I performed a cover with my favorite elements of both of those versions of the song, which you can see in the description. So here I have the delay set to a single repeat, and it's set to a dotted eighth rhythm, which what that means is it's essentially equivalent to 3/8 notes, the span of 3/8 notes, or a beat and a half, or a quarter note and a half, right? So in order to tap that with a tap tempo, you would be tapping on the 1 and then on the upbeat of 2. So I'll show you how that works in right now. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and. Okay. So what that helps us accomplish is the main figure, the intro figure of the song, which I'll play an example of right now. So that's the main figure of the song. Really neat, leans very heavily on the use of this dotted eighth delay. It's just integral to that. And you can hear a lot of really cool things that Jonny's doing by throwing in kind of those accented muted rakes, or that cool descending pattern he plays at the end, which without the delay would sound pretty silly. Because he's just picking out quarter notes, right? But he's letting the delay play for him and do interesting things and create new scales, and that's all over the song. It's the defining element of the solo, really, of the song as well too, is having the delay create, reorganize the notes in an interesting way. This idea of delays filling your playing along with you. He's used it to create really interesting melodies and rhythmic patterns, which enhance what Phil is doing on the drums, what Colin is doing on the bass, which just shows what a fantastic arranger that he is. This is true. So I played the intro, right? This is also true of the part that he plays after the bridge of the song. After the Broken Hearts Make It Rain, he plays this sort of descending octave melody pattern like this. And that's awesome because not only is he making use of the rhythm element to create those octave jumps, right? Without the delay would sound, it's just quarter notes. If you were to play it without using a delay, you just would have Led Zeppelin's Immigrant Song. Right? So he's using the delay, again, to just create a rhythmic texture. And again, he's using that other feature, which is to make interesting scales out of a simple quarter note pattern, to make a melody out of something much more minimalistic, right? So that without the delay, this is just, which sounds silly, with the delay, which is awesome. He does it again, obviously on the high B string. And then that's going to be the foundation of the solo. The end of the song is he's basically going to loop that pattern and take it up and down the scale, right? Right, he's taken an idea, right? This small concept, and used it in a few different contexts to create really interesting rhythms, memorable melodies, really leaning heavily into that property of the delay to be syncopated, to carry over into the next measure, to cycle upon itself and create new scales. So really, really awesome stuff. Moving on to Staircase. I absolutely adore this track. When I first heard it, that sort of luscious, undulating synth pad reminded me a lot of the soundtrack to the movie Blade Runner, which is another one of my favorites. And combined, with the frenetic dual drumming of Phil and Clive, that mix of acoustic and electronic sounds, and that unison bass line riff between Jonny and Colin, it was just a very tightly put together song with a lot of groove and emotion. Jonny plays a few different figures on the song. One is that bass line that I mentioned. He also has sort of a tremolo picking figure he does during the chorus and a couple of arpeggios. But the riff that I'm talking about, the really cool delay trick that he uses in this song, comes after that, pre-chorus, right, when he's doing these arpeggios, and then he goes into this repeating figure that sounds a little something like this. which is a really cool riff. So the delay setting used here is, again, the single repeat delay, but in contrast to Identikit, which was the dotted eighth rhythm, this is actually using a half note rhythm, which is selected because it lines up with the frequency of how often he's playing that little repeating two-note figure. So to get that, again, with the tap tempo, the easiest way here is not necessarily to think about the note value that you're tapping, but to think about the repetitions of the figure and try to tap in time with those repetitions. So if I was thinking about, just playing the one riff as an example, and I'll show with the tap, right, so that it lines up, and then now when you get it, yep. So when I first heard the riff, I was actually kind of stumped, and I, imagined that he might be playing dyads, little two-note chords, like this, or something like that, up and down the neck. But the giveaway for me as to why it was a delay pedal and not those two-note chords was, if you listen carefully, you can hear the very first and very last repetition of the pattern has no harmony on top of it. It's just and that is, you can tell he's clicked on the delay before the start of this note, and there's therefore no delay signal yet present to be layered on top of the next thing he plays, and vice versa. At the end, he plays the last repetition of, and then lets the delay play for him the last unaccompanied version of those notes. So again, you have layering as it comes in, and then on the way out, you have the right on its own. So really awesome. And, in contrast, again, the philosophy here, as it differs from Identikit, is that in Identikit, he was using the delay to fill in spaces in his playing, create new rhythmic ideas and new melodies. And in this case, on Staircase, he's using the delay to layer on top of his playing and to create almost a crude harmonizer type effect, or a instantly forgetful looper. So two things are cool about his choice of using three groupings of notes to play that melody and kind of loop them. One is that it creates that kind of interesting odd over even polyrhythm type expression that Jonny Greenwood's pretty well known for in, again, songs like Weird Fishes or in Let Down. In a similar way, you get that kind of interesting syncopation, interesting repetition, as opposed to a more evenly metered or evenly repeated phrase. And then the other thing that's cool about it is that kind of continuum nature of it, the last notes being played forming the basis of the harmony for the first repeat as you go back around. You create this sort of sense or illusion of an infinitely descending scale, sort of like an almost shepherd tone or barber pole-esque illusion, which I think fits in nicely, if not accidentally, with the themes of the song of a staircase kind of descending, which is really cool, and I'm sure maybe not intentional, but super impactful, and to me adds to my listening for the song. Finally, the present tense. Here I'm referring to the live arrangement for the song, which includes the cozy duet arrangement with Tom in Paul Thomas Anderson's backyard. What I'm about to describe is very well documented on the kingofgear.com website, so if I fail to adequately explain here, please do check that out. It's got a great description with some tabs as well. That will be helpful. So this delay trick is incredibly cool, and it shares a little bit in common with Identikit in terms of playing a more simple phrase, but using the delay to create a more complex rhythm or pattern or note sequence. So I'll give the example of the riff, and then I'll talk a little bit more about the delay settings in a second. So just a really, really cool pattern. And what he's doing here is he's using a 5/16 delay subdivision, which is not a very common subdivision for delays. And it sounds a little unintuitive, but it's actually pretty easy to tap out. And again, he's using a single repeat. And the way that this works is that slightly longer delay is going to cause interesting knock-on effects with the arpeggios, and I'll show you. It's a very simple pattern, again, that he's playing, similar to Identikit. He's playing very few notes relative to the notes you're hearing, but because of that backlog of notes that come back into the fray 5/16 notes later, you get a weird resequencing of the notes into an almost linear low to high arpeggio of the chord, which sounds really cool. It sounds kind of like a sequencer on a synthesizer, or an arpeggiator, sort of that very regular 16th note interval sweeping scale pattern, which is really cool. So I'll show you how the delay gets tapped in, and this is a 5/16 delay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now I can tell that I've got sort of the right delay setting armed for the loop, because, and you'll notice that Jonny does this too sometimes when he's playing, is he kind of taps on the strings in an 8th note pattern. He gets the 16th notes bouncing back. And that's going to be able to create that kind of constant 16th note arpeggiator feel for the song. So this is what he's playing without the delay pedal on. And once more with the delay pedal on. So again, it's really cool how the notes just kind of come back around and fill in the gaps in that arpeggio, because what you're hearing, what you play without the delay, sounds very sparse, but once you start to play it, the notes just kind of magically reappear in the right order to create these arpeggios. Coupled with this is the rhythmic tapping he does on the strings to kind of has the dual feature of adding texture to the loop, to the pattern, but also helping him orient himself and stay locked into the beat. Anyway, that's it for now. I hope you found this educational, if not somewhat inspiring. It was definitely inspiring for me to get a glimpse into the philosophy behind how Jonny uses effects and some of his techniques and how I might apply them to my own playing. Be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and if you have ideas for future videos like this, let me know in the comments.